The automatic doors of the hospital slid open just as the little girl collapsed. Her small body crumpled onto the cold tile floor, her school bag slipping from her shoulder. People froze. A nurse shouted for a gurney. And behind her, breathless and terrified, stood her father, hands shaking, eyes wide, heart pounding in his chest. He was a single dad, the kind who always looked tired no matter how much he slept. His jacket was worn at the elbows, his shoes scuffed thin. He had rushed from work the moment the school called, not even stopping to change, carrying his daughter all the way from the car when her legs gave out. Her name was Lily. She was 8 years old and smiled even when she shouldn't have. That morning she had insisted she was fine. "It's just a little dizzy, Papa," she'd said, forcing a grin as she tied her shoes. He believed her, because he needed to believe her. As nurses lifted Lily onto a stretcher, he tried to follow, but a doctor held up a hand. "We need space," she said firmly. The doors swung shut, leaving him alone in the hallway. The silence hit harder than any noise. He slid down the wall and buried his face in his hands. He thought about all the nights he'd worked late shifts, all the meals that were too simple, all the times he promised, "Next month will be better." Her mother had died 3 years ago, and since then, it had just been the two of them against the world. He'd sworn nothing would happen to Lily. The minutes crawled. Every second felt like a punishment. He stared at the hospital floor, counting tiles to stop his thoughts from spiraling. What if he missed something? What if he waited too long? What if loving her wasn't enough to keep her safe? A doctor finally emerged, her expression unreadable. She asked him to follow her to a small consultation room. His legs felt weak, but he stood. Inside, the lights were too bright, the chairs too hard. He sat on the edge, afraid that leaning back meant giving up. "She's stable for now," the doctor said. His breath released in a shaky rush, but then she continued. "However, this wasn't just fainting. Your daughter has a serious heart condition. It's congenital. She's likely had it since birth." The words didn't make sense at first. Heart condition, since birth. He shook his head. "But she's always been healthy," he said. "She runs, she laughs, she never complains." His voice cracked. "I would have known." The doctor's eyes softened. Many parents don't. Symptoms can be subtle: fatigue, dizziness. It often goes unnoticed until something like this happens. She paused. "She'll need surgery. Soon." The room felt like it was shrinking. Surgery meant money. It meant time off work. It meant risks he was terrified to name. He nodded slowly, pretending he understood, pretending he was strong enough to hear more. Later, he was allowed into Lily's room. She lay pale against the white sheets, wires attached to her chest, machines humming softly. When she saw him, her eyes brightened. "Papa," she whispered, smiling weakly. "I told you I was okay." He sat beside her and took her hand, careful not to disturb the tubes. "You scared me," he said, trying to smile back. Tears slipped down his face anyway. "Don't do that again, all right?" She squeezed his fingers. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't want you to worry. You already work so hard." The words shattered him. An 8-year-old shouldn't think like that. An 8-year-old shouldn't carry that kind of weight. That night, while Lily slept, he sat alone in the hallway, staring at his phone. The estimated cost of surgery blinked back at him like a cruel joke. He didn't have family to call, no savings to lean on, just a quiet fear that he wasn't enough. He bowed his head and whispered a prayer he hadn't spoken in years, not for himself, but for her. "Take anything," he murmured. "Just let her live." The next morning, a hospital administrator approached him. She asked him to come to her office. His stomach twisted, expecting paperwork he couldn't afford. But instead, she handed him a folder and smiled gently. "Your daughter's case was reviewed last night," she said, An anonymous donor has agreed to cover the full cost of her treatment, surgery, recovery, everything. He stared at her, convinced he'd misheard. "I don't understand," he said. "Why?" His voice was barely audible. She hesitated. "All I can say is that someone saw you carry your daughter into the hospital yesterday. They recognized something familiar. Love. And they wanted to help." He returned to Lily's room in a daze. He sat beside her bed, tears streaming freely now. For the first time since the doors closed behind her, hope filled his chest. Not loud, not certain, but real. Weeks later, Lily walked out of the hospital holding his hand, a small scar on her chest and a big smile on her face. He looked at her like she was a miracle, because to him, she was. And he finally understood something that would stay with him forever. He thought he was the only one holding her up, but sometimes, when you're at your weakest, the world quietly holds you too.